Hey man, I'm not gonna lie. I want to try something. Now this might be on some flight reacts, dut reacts timing, but I wanted to watch this video and I want to record it just because I mean, let's just have a conversation about it. I feel like this is we have to talk about weed. Now I'm not gonna lie. I know a lot of people. Personally, I'm not a weed connoisseur. I only got high once in my lifetime, and I'm not gonna lie. Wee, I was tripping. That's a story. I already told the story, but we need to hear it again. You know what I mean? Now I'm not gonna lie. I have drank a little bit, but I'm not an alcoholic at all. I can count on one hand how many times I got drunk for real. But let's talk about weed, though. Let's talk about weed.
Cannabis has been vilified to a ridiculous degree for the last century, but it's now finally being decriminalized in more and more places around the world. It's just recently been legalized in Germany.
Yeah, it's been legalized in the U.S. Apparently there's like little medicine cards and stuff for legalized marijuana. You know what I mean? It's having a pretty good uproar.
And for very good reasons. Compared to legal drugs like alcohol, which will cause 1 in 20 deaths just this year, cannabis is pretty mild. So, to justify harsh prosecution and punishment, its negative effects have been wildly overstated.
Hey, I was number 5 in the Twitch recap.
There was a lot of pushback. Something went wrong.
Nice.
If you followed the discourse over the last few years, you might have got the
impression. I ain't gonna lie, Dak, you just missed the whole college playoff section. I had to get catched up in the playoffs. Hey, Ash and Genty all the way. I'm playing.
Impression that weed has almost only
and
few, if any, negative side effects. We ourselves contributed to that narrative. What made this worse is that criminalization made it very hard for scientists to study cannabis, especially its long-term effects. They faced bureaucratic and legal hurdles, and studies often had to rely on small sample sizes.
All you know is Florida Gators on
In the
FSU.
last few years, this finally started to change, so it's time to bring new evidence.
Bro, what bowl games the Gators playing?
And, well, it's not pretty. While weed is still much less harmful than alcohol, it does have a dark side. It is more addictive than we thought and can have significant negative effects if you use it long term.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I know people be getting. Wait, is it Blackie Mouths that be making like your lips black?
Tell us how dumb we
I know weed already messes up your.
To be crystal clear,
messes up
we
your
think
lungs
prohibition doesn't work and cannabis should be legal. But this also means
I'm
that
playing
we need to treat it as what it is, a drug with unique upsides.
I remember Tulane, they got smoked by Army in that one bowl game.
Some of the latest research together.
That might be a little good game.
Stronger and stronger.
Well, maybe Florida can prove themselves.
Magic juice is tetrahydrocannabinol.
What y'all playing in the Cheez-It Bowl?
THC. It docks on your cannabinoid
Charmin
receptors,
Ultra Soft Bowl,
which affects various brain
the
functions.
Target Bowl.
THC activates some regions and calms down others, creating a fun cocktail of sensations. The more THC, the more intense the high. And people seem to be into higher highs, or at least this is what the market is providing.
Can I add something? You know what I heard? I haven't heard. Apparently, people be making like lab focused weed and shit, and apparently they be like reducing the amount of THC, and apparently it's considered fake weed in the smoking community. Now I'm not. This is one from my this is from a trusted source. You feel me? One of the weed smokers I know, but apparently they be selling like fake weed in like smoke shops and shit. And they be taking down the THC levels to where
fighting. In the US, Canada, and Europe, the concentration of THC in legal and illegal cannabis products has more than doubled in the last few decades. While ever more potent strains are bred, products like edibles or concentrates with more than 60% THC have become increasingly common.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I have taken one of them edibles.
THC has declined. Unfortunately, just about every problem weed creates gets worse at higher THC doses. At the same time, more and more people use weed. In the US, more people consumed cannabis daily than alcohol for the first time in 2022.
Damn.
In Canada, 26% of people 16 and older use it, up from 22% in 2018. It's not possible
to say. It's just low-key. I feel like weed is getting a little too normalized.
Pretty inconsistent and vary massively between different users.
Like I feel like, you know what I mean?
consumption went up.
I don't know, just low-key, I just feel like people are doing it more on a daily basis than like should. I feel like you should be getting on the weed, the cool, like, you know, cool weekend here and there, you know what I mean?
So today,
but like, some people be doing that
consume more
daily
weed than ever before in the last century, and
that's
it's
an
the
addiction.
strongest it's ever been. What are we seeing as a result
Even
of this?
low-key every weekend, that's kind
Let's
of
start
crazy.
with
Maybe
something that used to get you laughed out of the room: addiction.
talk
Weed
about
addiction and withdrawal symptoms. A big narrative about weed is that it's not addictive, or at least not that big of a deal. And for most people, this is true. Studies clearly show that the majority handle it well. For 8 out of 10 using weed, it's just a casual high and not problematic at all. About 2 in 10 users develop a cannabis use disorder, or CUD. CUD has 11 different symptoms, from the inability to stop when you've had enough,
neglect
to
of
using it
social
when you know it will
obligations.
have negative consequences, to tolerance and withdrawal. They can all basically be reduced to: you're doing it too often,
Zoro,
even
what
if
up,
it's bad for you, and it's less fun than it could be.
You
There
learn
are
about
3
weed
major risk
right now.
factors here: the amount of THC, how often you consume, and your age when you start using cannabis.
It has been a bit, man, a
The
little
more
2 weeks.
THC, the more often,
Gonna lie,
and
just
the
say,
younger
bro.
you are when you start, the
I ain't have no
higher the risk.
content that I've been fucking up with.
If you
but,
smoke
you know,
too much weed too
I've been chilling,
often,
though.
it will have negative impacts on your life.
I've been chilling, you feel me?
So
Trying to get
if
back
this
into the
is you,
swing of things.
Toning it down a bit will make a big difference. 1 in 10 users develops a serious addiction. They usually consume daily, and their life is significantly impaired or held back because they spend a lot of their time either using or recovering from cannabis use. Since their brain is building a tolerance, they need increasingly high doses or stronger weed, often both. Studies found a variety of negative effects. Heavy users can experience bad moods, feel irritable, restless, paranoid, anxious, and even depressive. In a sad twist of irony, for many addicts it feels like they need weed to fight these symptoms. Maybe it did actually help at first, while in reality it makes those
just making
symptoms
addiction
stronger and more
yeah.
persistent. Studies also found that loneliness and frequent cannabis use go hand in hand. If you feel lonely, you're more likely to use weed, and if you use weed, you may experience
It's just,
more
I don't know,
loneliness.
bro. Me personally, bro, doing any, like, I'm not trying to sound like an asshole, but like, bro, doing something like drugs and alcohol by your lonesome is, I'm like, that's very sad, bro. I feel like weed and alcohol is something you do at, like, you know what I mean, the party. Like, bro, me personally, I'm not drinking and smoking like on my lonesome one day, just like, damn, let me get a drink. You know, like I feel like in my lifetime I'm always gonna looking like, bro, if I want to like let loose some, you feel me, some nerves, if I'm at a party or something, I'm either gonna drink some or like maybe smoke some. You know what I mean? It's just I don't know. Personally, I would never do. I feel like that's like loneliness and addiction go hand in hand. That's gonna steer you towards being addicted to something. If you're just lonely and you got nothing to do and you're like, you know what, let me feel something by smoking something and get a drink.
It's not always easy to say which came first, but they seem
It's
to
done online to
reinforce
be
each
a
other.
sterile
So
processing
on the one
technician.
hand, cannabis makes loneliness feel
The hell
much
is
less
that?
bad. On the other hand, it can also make you feel more socially awkward than you actually are and withdraw from friends. This can lead to a downward spiral that ends in self-isolation and chronic loneliness. Another
Chronic
thing many people
loneliness.
who consume a lot experience is a mental numbness that makes boredom feel okay because it impacts the reward system of your brain. Not great, but good enough. You can spend your days killing time binging mildly interesting stuff, being numb rather than having fun.
I'm not gonna
Boredom
lie.
is a signal
Let me
to your
add
mind
something. Let me
to
add
get
something.
creative
Now,
or
the
learn
one
something
time
new, but this
I
is
have been high.
suppressed. This also makes quitting so much
Bro,
harder because your daily routine
I
suddenly
did take
seems
way
boring
too
and
much. Like, bro,
unexciting,
I was
making it
on
very tempting
edible,
to go back.
little blunts,
If you
weed
find
pen,
yourself
all
using
that.
constantly, this
And
can also
bro, what
stunt
I
your
get from
development as a
being
person.
high is like
The
you
numbness
have
dulls bad feelings,
no
making it easy
conscious,
not to deal with them.
you have no
But in
conscious
life, you
control
can
of
only get
like
over bad feelings
you
if
like you literally
actually feel
cannot
them,
think.
and you have to process
Like that's the
them
best
to
way I
grow.
can describe it. It's like you're just
Lastly,
feeling stuff.
let's talk about physical
Like
withdrawal
all
symptoms.
like
The
all
more
type
you
of
consume,
logic
the
and
worse they'll be for
conductive
you,
reasoning your
especially
brain
if
can
you
do.
use daily.
When you're high, you
Withdrawal
literally
can cause
don't have no
headaches,
control of that.
sweating or chills,
And
decreased
that's what I
appetite,
gained from
in
my
severe
like, you
cases,
feel me,
even
my
fever,
one and only time
nausea,
doing
and
stuff.
abdominal pain. You might have trouble falling asleep, and
it's legal.
if
I
you
can
do,
say. I can say.
you might have disturbing and vivid dreams. The withdrawal can put you in a depressive mood.
Basically, you
where
have to
life feels
sterilize and
daft
clean
pointless.
any used
You can
medical
feel
equipment.
restless,
Oh,
angry,
so you're like
anxious, or nervous.
like a helper.
You may feel
like a
unable
helper,
to
like a
do
nurse
anything
kind
at
of.
all. After a few days, these symptoms will begin
That's
to subside, and after a few weeks, they'll be gone entirely. The exact time depends on how much and how long you've been consuming cannabis. Now, let's get to the worst part. Weed may damage your brain.
No shit.
This section was not fun to research because there's fierce debate among researchers how bad weed is for your brain and whether it has irreversible long-term consequences or not.
I feel like it's just.
There's no consensus yet.
I feel like it's just illogical, bro. If you can't think while you're doing this drug, it should be doing some type of damage to your
critical brain chemistry. There is
like at
some
least
evidence
losing
that
some
it
type
may
of blood
alter its
cells.
structure. If it does, this may go away again if you quit after a few years, or not. We don't know yet. The consequences
like
vary a lot
one
between individuals.
easy
but
area you can
especially
look
for
at, bro.
heavy
Look at
users,
Fly
they have a
Reacts.
variety of
That man's
potentially unfunny
is
downsides.
damn near brain dead.
The most common
He's
one
funny as
is
hell
that
though,
your
but
memory gets
he cannot do
significantly
any
worse.
type of thinking.
Sustained
person.
heavy use may reduce your
But
ability
he's funny as
to
hell,
learn,
but
your reasoning, perception, attention span, decision-making, language abilities, and
It has to have
impulse
some
control.
type of defects.
Most negative effects seem to go away, or at least weaken over time after you quit. But again, we simply don't know enough and need more research. Where the evidence is much clearer is that consuming a lot of weed is really bad for teenagers on multiple levels. If you start using
Because their
heavily
brain is
early,
still
you
developing.
have many more years to build up potentially negative side effects. Teens who use a lot are much more likely to become addicted to weed. This may just be correlation and weed may not be the underlying cause, but heavy weed users are more likely to perform poorly in school and less likely to finish their education.
Yeah.
They are, on average, less satisfied with their life and what they've achieved. This may simply be because if your memory and motivation are stunted, you have fewer interesting
Bro,
experiences.
not even
and
teens,
forget
bro.
the
Just
ones you do
young
have.
adults.
And
Like,
there is strong
ever since it's
evidence
been
that teen
legalized,
users
like
are
the
way more
whole
likely to
perception
develop
of
mental
weed has
health
been
issues like
very
psychosis,
normalized.
schizophrenia, depression, or anxiety later in life. Once again, the younger you start, the higher the
Bro,
risk.
niggas be
And it
forgetting
also
like it's
seems
still
to rise
a
massively
drug.
with high THC
Still a
doses,
drug. Like
making
any
highly
amount
potent
of
cannabis
anything
products
is going to be
even
bad
more
for you.
dangerous for teens. Okay, let's wrap this up. We've only focused on the negative
Look at the
side
hell
of
out of
this
that one.
video. That was the whole point. As we said before, for most people, weed in moderation is totally fine and definitely way less harmful than alcohol. You do you, we're not your parents. The upside of moderation is also that when you do it, your experience will be more intense and special. But for teens, weed, especially using it regularly or a lot of it, is a bad idea, with potentially life-changing consequences. We know that criminalization did nothing to make this better. We now have a new chance under legalization. It begins with being open and honest about the state of science and acknowledging that weed is one drug among many others. Certainly not the worst one by a long shot, but also problematic for at least 1 to 3 out of 10 people using it. If you really have to try cannabis, there is a time and place, and that's in your 20s. If you're younger, the science is clear, don't do it. At least, not yet. You'll have plenty of time to experiment later.
W video.
Let's do a different experiment now.
Hold on.
With the help of today's sponsor, Odoo, a business management software,
hold
you
on.
can do
This is-
Let's science me 5 ducks, spy, minding yokes, and bring some.
Alright. That was a nice little educational video. I like that video. We got to learn about weed. You know what I mean? That was nice. I'm not gonna lie. I do want to try weed again. I'm not gonna lie. See, mostly when I've ever gone to like a little social event or hanging out with people, I've always drank a little some. I don't be drinking too much, like enough to feel some, but okay, I want to get off the drinking. I want to try weed, bro. Cause like, it's just, I definitely did too much while I was doing it, but I love want to try it. It's just, you know what I mean? I love want to try it. It was a fun little experience. Not for the person I was with, but for me personally, it was cool. But you know what I mean? That's a good little video, man. Educational, man. Nice. Educational, easy.